Greetings, people of Earth. My name is Todd Leonard.
And my name is Herb Montgomery, and we're just talking.
Thank you, Earthlings, for taking a moment to click the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon. I'm told that the algorithms on Earth appreciate that. So thank you.
And we do too. If you're new to this channel, each week Todd and I take a moment to talk about the upcoming weekend's lectionary reading from the Gospels, and we're aiming to talk about those readings in the context of love and inclusion and social justice. Our hope is that our talking will be just talking, as in justice, but that also something that is said during this time as we go back and forth would inspire you, as it often does with us, to do more than just talking. So, Todd, what's our passage this week?
We are in Luke chapter 6, verses 17 to 26, kind of known as Jesus' Sermon on the Plain.
I love this passage. I could be wrong about this, but I always assumed that the Sermon on the Mount was written first. I know both Matthew and Luke both took from Mark, right? But that
Mm-hmm.
these are, and from a different, another source as well. But I always assumed that Luke was written after Matthew. I don't know if I'm correct
Mm-hmm.
on that. I don't know what the recent scholarship is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I love how Luke kind of distills it. Like the Sermon on the Mount, it's like all of the teachings of Jesus compiled in 3 chapters, where the
Right.
Sermon on the Plain is just like the Beatitudes section taken out of the
Mm-hmm.
spiritualizing of it and
Mm-hmm.
making it concrete again. And it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like it's placing each one of those sections in more of a narrative context rather than just piling them all into one sermon. And I love this section in Luke. It just becomes crystal clear. For me, it's more clear in Luke than it is in Matthew.
Yeah, well, I mean, with Matthew, like you said, there is it whether intentional or not, it is easier to spiritualize it. This you really have to work hard to get around what is really straightforward and clear about just nuts and bolts.
Yeah,
Uh,
Jesus is right here blatantly critiquing the injustice of the system that he's
yeah,
living
and
in.
those, yeah, and critiquing those who are benefiting from it and those who are not. It's you really can't get around it here. Matthew, if you read it correctly, you really would come to the same conclusion, but people have done a very good job, and Matthew helps you uh, make it a little more spiritualized. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
no,
easier to
this is
sidestep in Matthew.
yeah, this is straightforward.
So the three groups. So, dude, I don't have my. I should have brought my little handy dandy illustration with me tonight, but like a cone. This always helps me when I'm thinking of this passage. Is the shape of a cone.
Mm-hmm.
A cone is, and you've heard me explain this before, but for those who are tuning in, a cone is the combination of two-dimensional shapes. The three-dimensional shape built on two-dimensional shapes, which is a circle and a triangle. And in
Mm-hmm.
a circle, we have a center, and then we have the margins or the edges. In a triangle, we have those at the bottom and those at the top. And the cone combines both of those. The closer you are to the center of the circle, the higher up you are in the triangle. The more
Mm-hmm.
marginalized you are in the circle, the lower you are in the
Mm-hmm.
triangle. So you're at the
Mm-hmm.
edges of the cone rather than up at the center and at the top.
Right.
So what Jesus is saying here is if your system causes you to be on the undersides or the edges of society of your system, blessed are you for the changes that the kingdom is calling for. They're in your favor. But to those of you who are at the center and at the top, woe to you. You're going to feel like this is turning your world upside down, and
Right.
you're going to feel like something's being taken away from you. Well, I mean, it is in a sense, the last shall be first and the first shall be last. That's really great news if you're last.
Right. It's good news one direction.
Right. And I would argue that ultimately it's a reclaiming of humanity to everyone in the cone, reclaiming of
Hmm.
humanity for everyone in the cone. And so it technically is good news for everybody, but it doesn't feel like good news for everybody. It's not perceived as good news for everybody.
Right. Discipline for children, careful discipline for children does not necessarily feel like good news in the short term, though if
That's a good way to put it.
wise parental discipline as a child gets older, the child recognizes that good parental discipline. And I'm talking about careful discipline. I'm not talking
Not
about a
abuse.
parent abusing a child. I'm talking
Right.
about wise parental discipline over time. A child, as they grow up, would recognize
And think
the
about
good
exercise
news
too.
of being raised by that.
Right. And I've heard the illustration used too of exercise. Exercise
Yes.
doesn't feel good in the moment, but man, long term, the benefits outweigh the
Correct.
short term misery, right? Well,
Right.
it's the same thing here. I mean, if you're bringing back equity or equality, that's really it's a step up for those folks that have been pushed down, right? For those
Hmm.
that are up here, for the valleys being making the lift, raising the valley. What was this passage in Isaiah? Leveling the flattening
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
high places and bringing up the low places.
Yep.
That
Hmm.
feels great if you're in a low place. It doesn't feel so great if you're in a high place.
No. No. But I mean, I want to. I think it bears mentioning here, though, because here and other places in the synoptics, Jesus does not make explicit reference most of the time to a leveling. He really seems to be mentioning winners and losers. Whether long term he sees that, I just want to bring that because I think you and I would say ultimately long term what we see from from wise revolutionaries and prophetic voices is they do see a leveling and an equity, but it appears in the short term this and some of the other things that Jesus says, it seems
It's
like
flipping the table, not sharing the
it's
table.
it's flipping at first.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just want to I just want to as we're talking about this, I think we are you and I, and because you are the scholar of the two of us,
That's not true.
that no, it's true. Uh, that we are doing some interpreting by adding in the concept, I think, of leveling. I think it's wise interpretation, but it because but the explicit really just sounds like a flip.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. Your comments, your statements make me think of in the book of Acts when the Roman imperial those that were complicit with the empire were seeking for they'd come to the Jason's house, right? And they're seeking for the
Mm,
apostles. And the
mm-hmm,
accusation is that these men, through their preaching of the teachings of Jesus, have turned the world upside down.
mm,
It doesn't say
mm.
has flattened the world, has
No.
turned the world upside down. So,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, there is that initial, I would agree with that. Whether
And
that's
it
true or not,
certainly,
it at
and
least
again,
feels it.
and whether or not it's true, the perception, like you said again, the perception of those at the top of the food chain, it would feel like it, and for the people at the bottom, if the good news really happens and things change for them, it really, both in a good and bad way, it does feel like the world's been flipped on its head.
I mean, let's be honest. If someone's getting favoritism, equality by its intrinsic nature means taking
Yes,
away from that
from
person that's
somebody
been getting
else.
favoritism, right?
Right,
Because you're no longer
right,
going to be practicing favoritism,
right.
privilege, taking
Yes.
privilege away from
Yep.
someone in order for everyone to be treated the same.
Yep. It's
So
true.
yeah, I get it. So what does this do to the way you and I were raised, Todd, where we were taught um, that the gospel is and I can already hear my own explanation on this, but the gospel is good
Well,
news for everyone. Or I remember this one preacher who came at me one time really hard at the end of one of my series and said, and he was a very wealthy individual, and he said, listen, if it ain't good news, it ain't the gospel.
hmm
And I had to come back and say, well, wait a second. You know, not everybody who hears the gospel feels like it's good news. Well, what do we do with that? With what are your thoughts on that? That both you and I think were raised with this universal or
hmm
universality to the good news of the gospel.
hmm So, yeah, thanks for putting that on me, Herb.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
Um,
sorry.
no, 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 no.
I
So,
mean,
I
if the
mean,
gospel is about getting to heaven, then yeah, it's good news for everybody.
I mean, this is where, I mean, if you want to be crystal clear here about where you're really getting to what is Jesus talking about, and you want to be darn explicit about it, then you have to be clear on this that Jesus is not talking about afterlife here. He is not. Otherwise,
There would
because
be no woe to the rich if he were just talking about
no,
heaven.
because of course, if you know the way that Christians talk about heaven, everybody's rich in heaven. Everybody gets the, you know, I mean, some people still think it's going to be segregated because we can't handle being around people of different, but you know, those are the, thankfully are getting fewer and fewer. But everybody gets the gated mansion in heaven. You know, everybody gets the gated community in heaven. So that's this is it. So when you were reading these passages from Jesus, you either have to say, okay, he this must be very specific to just this time and place, and it doesn't apply across the board, or this means he really has a vision for how the world here should operate. Whatever there is, if there is anything beyond this world, he really has a vision of looking after people who are on the margins of society, economically, racially, ably, etc. That he
Gender.
really has a vision of moving them up in the food chain to a place of equity that everybody has a seat at the table, and he is not happy, pleased with anybody who keeps them from getting to that place. And he is judging those who are the
And woe to
excluders.
those.
Woe to them.
I mean, what is that? What does that mean? Woe. Woe to you who are well fed. Woe to you who laugh. Woe to you who who are rich. Woe to you when everyone speaks well of you. That's an interesting term or phrase. Let's talk about that for a
Yeah.
second. You know, you
I
like,
don't
blessed
think you
are
want
you when
Jesus
everybody hates you.
saying, I don't think you want Jesus saying woe to you.
Yeah. Yeah, but woe to you when everyone speaks well of you. I mean, isn't that what we all like
Yeah,
want?
of
I mean,
course.
so there are people out there that hate me for some of the things that I say. Does that mean I'm on the right track?
Well, you kind of answer that in your writing this week.
I mean, I could just be a jerk,
Right, you
right?
could be. And you have to be, and you can have, and all of us have to be in that constant self-reflective state of, am I getting hated for because I'm standing up for the people who generally get hated, or am I being hated because I am in this case, or in these situations, I actually am being a jerk,
Right.
or even in my fighting for people,
Right. Who
I'm
is it
being
that's
a
hating
jerk.
me? That's the diagnostic question
Right.
for me. Who is it that hates me? Is it the people who Jesus says are blessed in this passage, or is it the people that Jesus is bestowing woes upon?
hmm
You know, I think that matters, doesn't it? I mean, you got to
I
have the
think
right
so.
people hating you.
Right. I think that matters.
There's so
Yeah.
much in this week's passage, Todd. So I'm reading a book right now um, by Walter Brueggemann called "In God We Do Not Trust." Have you seen? It feels
Hmm.
recent. I don't know the year it was
Sounds
published, but
recent.
it feels recent. In God we do not trust. And it is recent because he's critiquing at least the previous administration, if I mean the previous generation, Trump's first administration, he's critiquing. But one of the things he says in there is, and it reminded me so much of this passage that we're looking at this week, is where Christianity went wrong. Where we really went wrong is where we privatized the gospel and made it about afterlife, where we made it
Hmm.
about individual concerns
Hmm.
and the afterlife. And again, I think if that's where we land on our definition of the gospel, is just giving people assurance for post-mortem realities, then yeah, the gospel becomes an opioid. It becomes good news, no matter who you are.
Yeah.
But when we talk about establishing justice on the earth, if we define the gospel as the very first phrase, and this I thought about this a minute ago when you were talking, um, the Lord's Prayer. I mean, the
Hmm.
very first line of the Lord's Prayer is, "Thy will be done
Hmm.
on earth as it is in heaven." It's not, "Thank you for this ticket that gets me out of
Right.
earth and into heaven." It's,
Right.
"Thy will be done on earth as it is in
Right.
heaven." Right. And so
Right.
if it's about establishing, then those who are, then of course that's going to be good news for those whom the present system is doing harm. And it's going to be bad news. Dare I say that the gospel could be bad news? It's going to be bad news, at least initially,
Yep.
for those whom the present unjust system is benefiting at other people's expense. If your benefit is coming at someone else's harm, then righting the world is not good news for you.
Right.
I mean, it could be long term. Again, I'll grant that. But initially,
Yeah.
my whole point was when that guy came at me and said, if it's not good news, it's not the gospel. I thought, well, Caiaphas and Herod and Pilate sure didn't think Jesus's teachings were
No.
good news.
No. And we have the story in the Gospels about the rich young ruler who heard Jesus tell him what the gospel was, which was to sell everything he had and give it to the poor. And the rich young ruler went away sorrowful
That's right.
because he had great wealth. On the other hand, you have the story of Zacchaeus, who found the gospel so compelling as a rich man that he gave away much of his wealth back to the
Mm-hmm.
people he had taken advantage of because he found so much good news to him as a rich man that was not tied to his wealth that he was willing to give up most of his wealth in
Mm-hmm.
order to follow in the footsteps of Jesus. And you have the
Yeah.
same thing in the book of Acts with early followers, wealthy followers, taking their personal wealth and turning it into group wealth to make sure everyone in the early Christian church community had enough to take care of
Commonwealth.
each other. Commonwealth. They turned it into commonwealth. They were willing to let it go and become socialized wealth for the sake of that community. So
Oh, now
there
you're
were
meddling, Todd.
rich
Now you're
there's
meddling.
rich people who saw the good news that was above holding on to wealth. So there were rich people who saw it as good news, but most did not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I was
So,
meddling.
no, I think it's good. So if you don't think something is good news and you're tempted to write it off as not the gospel or not correct or not right because it doesn't sound like good news, you might want to check your social location.
Hmm.
Why are you feeling threatened by this? Now,
Hmm.
granted, if you're someone whose humanity is being denied and your situation is being made worse and it's not good news, then by all means, it's not good news. But
Right.
if you're just threatened by, dare I say, something like diversity or equity
Hmm.
or inclusion, if you're just
Hmm.
threatened by that stuff,
Yeah.
maybe time
Yeah.
to do some assessment, personal assessment.
Yeah. Yeah, what is, yeah, that's a great question. What threatens you? What threatens you? Is it somebody? It astounds me if we're making application to today, how people who are 1% of the population, I'm speaking, I mean, this is recent data. It may gone up more as in the last few years as people have felt more comfortable uh, expressing themselves in safer environments until recently. But 1% of our population was identifying as transgender, and between 0.5% and 1% was data from 5-6 years ago, um, and one political party's major
Oh
part of
my
its
gosh, their
platform,
hair was on fire.
it was like this is destroying our country. 0.5 to 1% of our country is threatening the entire way of life for everybody else. Really, this is really they are destroying your, really, seriously. This
I
is
know.
when you're saying that's such a small group of marginalized people who are at such a high risk for suicide, uh, are threatening your ability to think in a binary way. Um, that's
Yeah.
something you need to. That's something you've got to wrestle with.
So in our context today, Todd, would the woes be to, yes, the rich, because there's economic injustice taking place, right?
Yeah.
Would there also be woes then to, and I'm just asking, don't, again, I'm going to get hated for saying this, but woe to you who are white, woe to you who are male, woe to you who are straight, woe to you who are cisgender. Why? Because equity is going to feel very threatening to you.
Right.
Not because there's
Yeah.
something intrinsically wrong with you. No, it's because the system is intrinsically, it privileges you at the
Skewed.
expense of someone.
That's right.
It's skewed to, in your favor. And so pulling it back into balance, woe to you. I feel sorry for you. This is going to be a tough road for you.
Yeah.
Equity is going to be a hard road for you. What is a blessing
Yeah.
to others is going to feel like a threat and your whole world being turned upside down for you.
Yep.
Well, I like this
Yeah.
passage even more right now.
Yeah. I mean,
It's a
I mean,
good passage.
let's be honest. Figuring out the bathroom thing. Okay, there's some complexity to that. There's it's okay, but I mean, there's and the sports thing. But here's the thing: it's sports. It's
Okay.
it's sports. It's sports. It's games. There's that, and there's growth and development, and there's processes that we go through in trying to figure this stuff out. And on the way to getting things right, there's growing pains, and
Mm-hmm.
we can get things figured out. But
Yeah,
you
because what we're
don't
talking about
solve
is
it
not.
by sticking your neck in the sand and acting
Mhm.
like it doesn't exist. You say, no, we got to figure this stuff out for the sake of bringing everybody to the table.
Yeah. Yeah. It's because what we're talking about is housing. What we're talking about is
Healthcare.
employment, health care, public services.
Yep.
We're not really talking about sports,
Right.
games,
Right.
and bathrooms. That's all a
Right.
ruse. Like I
Right.
remember when we were expanding the non-discrimination ordinance here for the town that I live in, our small municipality. One of the objections that the Baptist would give against this was this whole bathroom objection,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there's a way around that. There's a way to make
Yeah, of
whatever
course.
your comfort level is. There are ways to orchestrate bathrooms, right? There's a million and one
We had to
options.
change all sorts of restrooms when we brought the American with Disabilities Act. We had to do all sorts of
Exactly,
of things
exactly.
for that.
But one of the things that I brought up at the public hearing over this debate was the studies from Massachusetts, or was it Michigan? No, it was Massachusetts, who was one of the first states to move in this
Mm-hmm.
direction.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole objection for them up there of bathrooms is like 2 decades old now, right?
Yeah,
It's and nothing happened. They went
yeah,
ahead, they broadened their non-discrimination, and all this bathroom terror, nothing happened up there.
right,
Nothing happened.
right,
We've got 2 decades now of
right,
after the fact to look at, and nothing
right,
happened.
right.
It's all a red herring.
Yeah, the
The
the rate of
transgender people
incidence
are not the
is
ones to be afraid of. They're afraid of
right,
us.
right, right. That's right. Yeah, who should be scared of whom?
That's right.
So yeah, we're bringing this topic, but this is, I mean,
But
this
yeah,
specific
woe to you.
example, but this is a woe to you thing. This is a
It
woe to
is.
you is who, when you as a privileged person are scared by the people who have no power, who are desperately saying, "Hey, what about us? Hey." And some people who actually have a little bit of power start bringing their voice with it. There's just a few people with some money who bring their voice with it. All of a sudden, you get scared, and because the voices don't seem to be coming from the favored religion, because the favored religion is not speaking up, so then they say, well, then it must be an anti-religious movement because it's not coming. No, it's just because nobody from the religious movement is speaking up for it. It is people. So we are going to be scared by a few people sticking up for people on the margins. Really, are we? We're going to act like that's going to destroy our whole way of life. Woe to us if we fall into that.
So the blesseds would be, blessed are you who are black, for your lives will matter.
Mm-hmm.
Blessed are you who are women, for there'll be no more glass ceiling, and there'll be equal
Yeah.
pay, and you'll feel safe walking down the street. Blessed are you who are LGBTQ.
Mm-hmm.
Blessed are you who, and man, now it makes perfect sense when you say these things out loud. Why Jesus would end this phrase with, "Oh, and by the way, blessed are people when they hate you for saying it."
Right. Because.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense why it would land there.
Yep.
Blessed are people. I mean, blessed are the poor. Blessed are you hungry. Blessed are you who weep, whom the system causes you to weep. And blessed are
Yep.
you when people hate you. I mean, it almost feels like it's coming out of left field until you put it in the vernacular. And then it's like, oh, of course,
Yeah.
of
And,
course.
and until you decide to pick up a few of these chestnuts and say them out loud and find out
Right.
what happens to you when you say them. It's like,
Blessed are you who are
oh,
undocumented and have a child who was born in the U.S. and you are now going to weep from
oh,
your separation. Yeah,
that you didn't like that one? Oh,
right.
you don't want to sing the closing hymn after that one? Oh, what? Hmm.
They didn't stick around for the closing hymn.
Right.
Oh man, there's a lot of good stuff this week. It's a lot of challenging stuff, I know, but it's good. It's good to process it.
Well, I mean, it's just again. I mean, oh man, I'm telling you, I just, I, you read this stuff with hopefully non-jaundiced eyes, and you,
Is that a pun? Are you punning non-John dis eyes?
oh, not, no, that was not intentional. Um, um, let him who has ears to hear, let him hear. Um,
Leave it at that.
um, uh, uh, it's just it makes you just yearn for a Christianity that is as powerful as American Christianity is, but
In
that
the
would be
wrong direction.
for
Yeah.
the actual gospel of Jesus. And think what could be done. I mean, think about flipping the world upside down, man.
In the
There
name of
would be,
justice.
in the name of
For the
justice.
marginalized, the oppressed, the subjugated, those on the undersides of society. What would Christianity look like if for one time in history we landed on the right side of a social issue?
And you and and listen, and this is not about feeling sorry for Herb and Todd. I'm just making a point here. You and I, we bring this up every week to the 35 or 40 people who watch our episode. I mean, this is how popular this message is getting. Nobody pass, this doesn't get passed along, and then even if it does, other people who watch it, it's a eh. I'm not saying we're the greatest messengers in the world, but this gospel is
It could
not
have way better
popular.
packaging.
And then there are pastors and podcasters out there who are doing the Christian nationalism stuff who just got people following them in the millions. And it's just like it's just so obvious what people are wanting. It's just phenomenal how skewed the gospel has become.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a paradox for sure. Well, you got anything else this week, Todd?
We
I feel like
kind
we
of end
dropped
kind
so
of
many
ending on a
land.
downer.
I feel like we've dropped so many bombs tonight.
Yeah,
Like this
no,
is
I
like
mean
the
there's
culture war special.
I
Like
mean
everybody has
this
their
is
holiday special. We have our culture war special every time we hit Luke
yeah.
6.
Well, this is Jesus going nuclear. I mean, this is hard stuff. This is you got this, and you got what he does in Matthew 22, where he goes on the woes in Matthew 22. I mean, these are some of the hardest places where for
People don't
Jesus
like a
just
Jesus who hands out woes.
no, no, just gets a little too close to the vest there. No, I think that's all I've got. I just God bless people who hear this and in their own
God bless the
ways stick.
Nicodemuses.
God bless the Nicodemuses. God bless the Zacchaeuses. God bless the 12, the people like the 12 who say, you know what? No, we're not going to leave you. You have the words of
Yeah,
life. We're
where
going to
else are we going
stick
to
with
go?
you. We can't go anywhere else. We're going to keep going. We're sticking it out with you. This
And
is
Nicodemus, too,
God
bless his
bless.
heart. You were bringing him up a minute ago. He only did half of what Jesus asked him to do. You
Well,
know
that's
what I
true.
mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He at least made reparations. He did make reparations to where he had
Yes.
defrauded people in the past. But then he
Yeah.
said, I'm going to give half of my things to the poor. He didn't
Right.
go even as far as the rich young ruler was told to
Right.
go. Right, right,
Right.
right. But Jesus still said, today salvation has come to
Yes.
this household
Yes. Because this
because the
guy
journey had
is
begun.
the journey had begun. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
So lean into it. If you're one of those Zacchaeuses out there, I know it feels woeful initially. Lean into it. You're in the right story.
Yeah.
You're in the right story.
And I had some communication this past week with people in my life and people in my past life, and um, so much of my public ministry had very little impact in the world. It just nothing. It was an example of failure in so many ways because this gospel just does not resonate, and yet I had so many people say, yeah, but you help me, or you help this person, you help there is there is transformation that happens along the way for those of us who feel like we're fighting against a system that is overwhelmingly against what Jesus is doing here. But your work is not in vain.
Yeah.
So don't give
Yeah.
up on it. Don't give up. Just just keep plugging.
Don't listen to what the algorithm tells you.
That's right.
Pay attention to those for whom you're actually helping.
Yeah. Here, here. So what's going on with Renewed Heart Ministries, Herb?
Oh, Renewed Heart Ministries. But nothing new. We're just doing the same old, same old. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Renewed Heart Ministries, we are a not-for-profit ministry that helps people find the intersection of their faith and engagement with whatever area of social justice you are passionate about. We all of our resources online are free. You can go there, check us out. Renewed Heart Ministries. Whenever I bring up Renewed Heart Ministries, I also always want to thank those out there who are supporting our work. Because we do everything for free, we are directly dependent on the generosity of those who support Renewed Heart Ministries. We're not making a profit here. We're trying to give the gospel away for free. And thank you. If you're out there and you're supporting Renewed Heart Ministries work, thank you for all that you're doing to enable us to continue doing what we're doing. And if you're out there and you'd like to join them in supporting Renewed Heart Ministries work, it's very simple. You just go to renewedheartministries.com and click donate. It's that simple. But if you're unfamiliar with Renewed Heart Ministries, renewedheartministries.com, check it out. You can spend hours there. Todd, tell us about what's going on with your counseling or your coaching.
Yeah, I'm going to highlight this week. Just if you're, I try to put out some thoughtful content. At least once a week, I'll put out a short video reel with some insight, and then a couple other posts during the week on my social media related to just thoughtful things about either self-care or about spirituality, things like that. So you can find me if you go to Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and type Todd J. Leonard or Todd Jason Leonard, you'll find me on those social media platforms, and I post stuff there almost every day, and some funny stuff too. I mean, I think it's funny. Uh,
I don't post any funny stuff. Should I start posting funny stuff?
well, you're not really funny, Herb. I mean, that's the problem. It's just like I'm funny, but you're.
See, you
Oh,
made me laugh. You made
I'm
me laugh.
kidding. I kid. No,
It's
yeah,
true.
yeah. You could do some funny stuff. Yeah, never. Think about it.
People
Um,
usually don't. I'm funny. People just don't usually get my humor.
well, and that's the problem. Sometimes
It's dark.
it's when you're genius level comedy. It's
Oh
like
my goodness.
you
I
only have
wasn't going to
so.
go there.
Yeah, I mean, there's just not everybody gets you. It's like you're a comedian's comedian. It's like the comedians like you, but the common people don't get you.
That's
That's
not
what you.
true.
That's what you are.
That's not true. I'm just not funny. That's what it is.
So
All
anyway,
right.
you find Herb on his social media platforms as well that you can find through Renewed Heart Ministries, and you can find me on the main ones. I've tried getting into some of the others. I haven't been really good at always posting my stuff on all the 4 or 5 other ones, but maybe I will. But right now, if you Facebook,
Blue Sky, man.
Instagram,
You got to check
LinkedIn,
out Blue Sky, Todd.
I'm on Blue Sky, but I haven't like
Okay.
consistently done it because I haven't figured out like how to do the reels and stuff like
Okay.
that. I got to figure out. I got to be better at. I have not spent enough time on Blue Sky to
I
really
love Blue
make it
Sky.
my own.
I
So
love it.
I'll give it more time. So anyway, thank you guys again. I wasn't bringing up our small numbers to decry us. We love the community we have with you guys. We're grateful for you. It's been a while since we've heard any comments on our YouTube channel. We'd love to hear some comments, some feedback, just some your thoughts. Just it could be about what we're talking about tonight, or it could just be random thoughts or random greetings. We'd love to hear from you and just
And
know
pushback. It
you're
can be
out there.
pushback too if you want it to be.
Oh, all right. Yeah, it could be pushback too. Okay. Yeah, you could disagree with us, I suppose. Yes. So, anyway, thank you all for being with us. We'll look forward to being with you next week.
See you guys.